folks come in and have questions, we can discuss with them as we go. Rich, you can start a recording on this, and then if also anyone realizes they didn't make it, we can always send them a link. My name's Christian Meyer. I'm a transportation planner with the Naugatuck-Valley Council of Governments. The Naugatuck Council of Governments contains the Central Naugatuck Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as 4 towns that are part of the Greater Bridgeport Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization. I point that out just because there are slightly different processes for this grant, for this funding source. It's not a grant, as we go through the application phase. So before I get started, I did want to just take a quick attendance, see who we got from which communities, and we'll go from there. Anyone from Ansonia, you can unmute yourself in response if anyone's on. Beacon Falls, Bethlehem, Bristol, Cheshire, Derby, Middlebury, Naugatuck.
Ed Carter.
Thank you. Oxford, Plymouth, Prospect, Seymour, Shelton, Southbury, Thomaston, Watertown, Waterbury, Wolcott.
Mary Marone.
Mary Marone, hi Mary. And Woodbury. Anyone first from our communities that I didn't call on?
You noticed Roy in the chat, Christian?
I did not have my chat on and therefore did not see him. I
Roy
did see him come in. Okay, I'll put Roy in. Great. I'll just do a quick introductions for NVCOG staff, as I'm sure they'll be participating. Mark, you can introduce yourself.
Mark Nielsen, Director of Planning.
Gabe, why don't you?
Hi, I'm Gabriel Filer. I am the transportation planner.
And Rich.
Richard Crowther, GIS analyst, Zoom master.
I also see we have a couple guests from DOT, so why don't you go ahead, starting with Grayson.
Yeah, I'm Grayson Wright from Bureau of Policy and Planning within the department. I'm also the project manager for the CMAQ program for the COGS within planning.
Anyone else? Oh.
Sarah Dacey with the Bureau of Policy and Planning, DOT, and Department Liaison for Naugatuck-Valley.
Anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves? All right, well, I'll jump right into it.
Christian, before you get started, I do see on the participation list a phone number 203-772.
Yes, ending in 7042.
*6 to unmute on the phone.
*6 to unmute on the phone. All right.
Hi, it's Lori Rotella from the Borough.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Borough of Naugatuck, sorry. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. All right, well, I'll get started. All right, so as we know, this is the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program. As I said, there are 2 MPOs under consideration here and slightly different timelines. So I'll start right with the dates. First, for the internal applications, these are rather cursory without significant detail. Both the NVCOG and MetroCOG have put one together. NVCOG will be meeting on the 26th. The Transportation Technical Advisory Committee will be meeting on the 26th to review those internal applications and make a ranked recommendation for the MPO board meeting, which will be held February 12th. Sorry. There's tears in the background on my house, sorry. It sounds like parent has responded though. All right, so February 12th is the board meeting. And that will, at that point, we'll have an approved ranking for the for all the towns. So you'll be able to know that you have support from the region before you start putting the effort into the DOT application, which does require more detail. Greater Bridgeport Valley MPO, it's a little quicker on the front side with their TTAC meeting next week, the 20th, and the board meeting the 28th. For all these process, NVCOG is available to help in putting together the applications or reviewing pre-applications. Again, starting from 30,000 feet, CMAQ is used for transportation projects and that contribute to meeting the national air quality standards. Therefore, projects must demonstrate air quality benefits. This plays heavily into the DOT ranking or scoring of projects that are put forward by the MPOs. So you see the cost effectiveness, that is the air quality improvement per dollar, is ranked at 60% of the total score, with our regional ranking at 20%, and then operation and maintenance at another 20%. So as you're thinking of projects and as you're putting together an application, that cost effectiveness piece is something we want to stress. Let's see. As I said, the two TTACs will be ranking their top 4 and 3 choices, 4 choices for COG CNV because it's a larger MPO. It has 15 communities, where the Greater Bridgeport Valley MPO is only 10 communities, so they get fewer projects up front. Those rankings will be endorsed by the board, again, giving each community 2 months to respond with full NVCOG support. All right, funding. It's 80% federal, generally speaking, and 20% local match. There is an exception for 100% federal funding, specifically for projects that support safety issues, as well as air quality improvement. And these projects can be summarized under traffic signal upgrades, roundabouts, or priority control systems for emergency vehicles in transit. There are other items, but the air quality gets harder to justify. Air quality improvements get harder to justify under those other project types. So that's the introduction. That's the nuts and bolts. Now I want to get into just open it up for additional comments that Mark or any other staff or DOT would like to add, but really opening it up to the communities to ask questions or get information. Nothing from NVCOG?
I would just add, I think it was a quick overview. It is a program really designed for, again, the air quality, congestion mitigation action. So even though the project categories and sort of eligible projects that Christian now has on the screen, it's fairly, long. We just always have to keep in mind that not all of these types of projects will have the ability to demonstrate, significant air quality or emissions reduction. So as we're thinking about it, projects, we need to keep that in mind. Pedestrian and bicycle facility programs are eligible, but again, a project that really is located in a much more intensely developed urban area may have more emission benefits than a project that's located in a very rural area, because in an urban area you could see where a bike facility or a pedestrian facility could reduce the number of vehicle trips. So again, that's how we have to sort of think about it. So there's a fairly long list, but you always have to understand, the goal of this is to reduce the number of motor vehicle trips so that we can reduce our emissions. Then the only other thing I will say is with transit improvements, that's also on the list, but there are some, not really limitations, but there is a need to demonstrate that after a certain period of time, the operator of that transit system will continue the service and, then assume the operating costs that the CMAQ program had been subsidizing and covering, for the first couple of three. But is it 3 years or 5 years now?
So for transit, it's 3 years, but the funding can be spread out over 5 years. So you can take, say that third year, if you had 200,000 set aside, you can break it into 75, and 50,000. So you kind of taper off your funding stream rather than just a cold turkey.
And again, the issue with that is that you need to have that commitment from the operator that they will continue the service after CMAQ funds are no longer available for the project. So it's not like we can just implement a transit service, run it for 3 years while we get CMAQ and then, shut it down. That's not sort of the intent. The intent is sort of for transit anyhow to be like a startup and get it up and rolling, and then coming up with how to continue the funding over time. So those are kind of some of the things to keep in mind. I think typically we've seen with sort of local projects that have been proposed over the years, the traffic signal improvements are a typical, kind of a well-established type of project that has the types of air quality benefits that the program would like to see. So, and again, that's not always the case. Not all towns own and operate their own traffic signals, so it's always a little bit more of a difficult setup. But there are cases where a town could do some local improvements to an intersection, such as adding a turn lane or adjusting the signal time to make flow a little bit better. So those types of things would be eligible under the program. So. In some cases, we need to be creative and really fully understand the intent of this program.
Yeah. Real quickly, I just saw someone joined as Mark was speaking, phone number ending in 8460. You could just unmute yourself, which I believe is *6, and let us know who you are, and can note you in our attendance. Or you can, if you have access to the presentation, you can type it into the...
Kathleen O'Neill.
Kathleen, welcome, Kathleen. We went over some basics about the program, really the timeline, and at the beginning of the presentation, we can talk a little more after we've wrapped up, Kathleen, if you'd like to. But right now, we're fielding any questions folks may have. I see a number of participants from Naugatuck. Does Naugatuck have a project they're considering, want to talk about?
I do not at this time. This is Lori.
Okay, hi, Lori. So with that, again, leave it open to anyone who might want to ask a direct question. I don't want to take up the airways, but I can also start looking at some of the projects we as planners and at the regional level kind of thought might be possibilities. So Mark mentioned transit. I think there's a couple interesting transit projects that we'd like to see expanded out of the Waterbury system. One is create service along Lakewood Road. Yes, Lakewood Road in Waterbury, which is a #1 priority for the business community, but also for the transit system. And the second expansion of the Waterbury system that we would consider, again, there's municipal support, is making a permanent connection between downtown Waterbury and downtown Naugatuck. Right now, there is a Naugatuck bus run out of the Waterbury system, but there's not intercity connections between the two sort of cells, if you will. There's not a service that, say, runs right down Route 8 or one of the adjacent roads connecting the two downtowns with regular service. And again, if as I mentioned, these projects, they help you think of another project that might be good in your community, just interrupt me and we can talk about that and see how it might fit into it. In terms of trails, multi-use trails, Mark brought up that we have to really be able to show that this is an air quality improvement and that we're reducing vehicle miles traveled by investing in a project. So again, a Waterbury Naugatuck project is that's also active transportation, bike and ped focused, is extending the greenway to connect Naugatuck to the ongoing work that's taking place in Waterbury. The idea is here we'd have to be able to show that this would be a viable alternative for commuting between the two communities. One project at a Naugatuck that came up on our long range plan that we update every 4 years, was reconfiguring the lanes on the Maple Street Bridge in Naugatuck to accommodate a bike lane. Here's the idea, connecting the east side and the west side of the river or of the community by more multimodal transportation modes. Not sure how this would fit into a program like this because the grant funds are not particularly large, up to $4 million. But Naugatuck has been working around the idea of an inland port. If there's a smaller piece of that, maybe some roadway improvements for access, that would be something that could potentially shift truck traffic onto rail. Something like that could potentially qualify as we move those diesel trucks off the highway. And then a final category, which is alternative vehicles and fuels, is kind of interesting. This wasn't available in the last solicitation here in Connecticut, but looking at hybrid or electric vehicles for the public fleet or the infrastructure needed to charge those vehicles. So this could be, like I said, Plymouth took advantage of this in several solicitations back, the purchasing hybrid vehicles for some of their staff to use. Again, just directly reducing emissions by creating more, by putting staff in more efficient vehicles. At this point, with the explosion in electric vehicles, maybe it's the time to try to look at some charging stations in municipal lots. We've had requests from some of our communities over the years for those kinds of grant funding. Of course, there is a cost issue where we're looking at something between the range of $200,000 and $200,000. Although Grayson could probably answer if that one falls under the $50,000. That is equipment. Yeah, so maybe that falls under the $50,000 threshold.
Are you, Christian, are you talking about the charging stations?
Yeah, if a community were to pursue charging stations or alternative fuel vehicles, would they have to develop a project that met that $200,000 threshold, or would they be able to do it with the $50,000 threshold?
In terms of charging station, of course, it would have to be associated with acquiring alternative fuel vehicles, and it can't be competing with existing private charging stations that are close by. And as Mark mentioned earlier, the thing with the CMAQ program, one of the main requirements, one of 3, is that it does provide some kind of emissions reduction benefit. So if it's replacing an existing charging station, it has to somehow has some kind of benefit compared to the baseline or the existing condition.
Right.
So, meaning the town would have to be acquiring electric vehicles, which would require them to also build a charging station infrastructure to support this effort.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
But if it's if it's a purchase like bike, for example, we're funding maybe 1 or 2 bike rack projects at a transit station, which was like $50,000 and below. So something like that would qualify, meaning you clearly demonstrated that it would actually improve the usage of bikes. are bicycling to the station.
All right. So I don't know if that seeded any ideas, or if you came with ideas, I'll call on everyone. So what about Woolcup Married? Is there a project that brought you to the meeting today, or just general information gathering?
Just general for myself right now.
Okay. With the diesel retrofits, I mean, potentially that's another area where municipal vehicles could be rebuilt for a more efficient engine. That's similar to going with the more efficient vehicles. What about Oxford? Kathleen, do you have any direct questions?
No, I think it's more for information, Christian, because as you know, we're still in the routing study. I did have a couple that I'd like to go over with you, maybe after the meeting, but probably next time.
Okay, probably not this solicitation. So that's also worth mentioning. The solicitations for CMAQ often, well, actually, Grayson, I'm going to leave that to you. I don't believe this when will we see our next solicitation for CMAQ? It won't be after 2 years. It would be at a longer time frame. Am I correct?
It could be longer. I mean, the initial goal when we first started this program for the COGS was to do it every 2 years. But one of the reasons why we haven't been able to keep that schedule, I mean, from the 2015 solicitation, there are still projects in the pipeline.
From the 2013, there's still some.
From the 2011. You know, because of one reason or the other, maybe it's scope being changed and what have you. So there are times when we have to approach management and make a request to go out again for another solicitation. And usually the first thing that they'll do is look at the previous solicitation to get an idea of the status of a lot of the projects that were selected under that particular solicitation. So you're right. It's not a set schedule.
Okay.
So I can't say
No,
2 years or 3 years, to be honest.
Christian, the reason I said I would speak to you probably later is there are projects. One, for example, you know, we're having the redesign of Route 67, and we want to have a transit, possibly an electric bus or something that would that we could institute this in this grant, if it's not going to be coming back for a while, because that is one of the goals of the project. And there's also a small bicycle extension that could be done that wouldn't be affected by the routing. That's why I thought we could chat, you know, separately and see what you think. But I would love to be able to get the transit in the works through this grant.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk more about that. We mentioned a little bit of this earlier. Mark mentioned with the transit, you can get up to 3 years of operational funding, but then we have to show additional resources available and commitment to fund it after that initial period is complete. So for example, if we're working with CT Transit in Waterbury, we're going to partner with CT Transit from the get-go and make sure that we're on the same page in terms of providing that transit. Something to think about is in Oxford is, would there be a partnership, or perhaps this would be a municipal bus or service. VTD's just down the road. Maybe there's a conversation to have there too.
Exactly. I did hear Mark's presentation, and so yes, I'd be interested, Christian.
Yep. Well, we can definitely have another call. So for for Oxford, we'd want to, depending on where the direction we went, we want to be able to put together a pre-application for the 26th of January. Is when we're going to be doing pre-screens and have our TTAC rank the submissions. And we can work with you to pull that together, okay?
And that'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Roy, do you have any questions you want to ask from the town of Watertown? Oh, Andrew Bailick. So we got Derby.
Roy said good in the chat box.
Okay. Hi, Drew. We've gone through most of the details of the program, but we're kind of just discussing if there's any ideas Derby came to the table with that you want to discuss. We can do that.
Hey, Christian, sorry, I'm late to the party.
That's fine. That's fine. We've gone through most of the material on our presentation. What I'm going to do for anyone who's in the call and has any place else to be, I'm going to try to drop the files into our chat box so I give them to you again. See if that works. And then if anyone needs to, they can scamper off to other places and we can answer questions.
And Christian, while you're doing that, just to answer your question, Drew, again, I'm not sure if you're or the city are thinking about any possible projects that you have come up with. And again, we're here, we can help you sort of, put together a pre-application and then the final application. Again, the program is really designed for types of projects that are going to have a air quality benefit. They're going to reduce the number of vehicle trips and improve the flow of traffic through an area. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts that you may want to discuss. We're always available.
Yeah, I think that's really what I was hoping to do, was maybe speak with you and or Christian offline about some potential possibilities for this.
Okay.
Unfortunately, with everything that we've had going on, I think some of the ins and outs of Derby City Hall the last couple of weeks, which have been crazy. It's going to be something that I'm going to have to run point on. It's something that I normally wouldn't. So I'm happy to do so, but I think I would need to chat with you guys offline a little bit to understand exactly what this would look like.
You want to touch base beginning of next week, or do you want to try to touch base tomorrow?
We can
probably beginning of next week.
Okay. And
we can also stay on the call. So just for anyone who wants me to resend all the pre-application, CTDOT guidelines, etc., feel free to drop your email into the chat box. I'm not able to drop the files into the chat box as I was hoping. No, can't do one at a time either. Yeah. All right. So yeah, just drop your, I have a lot of your emails, but for example, Lori and Ed, I don't have your email. I can, if you drop it in the chat box, I can send you any materials that we discussed today. And like I say, with that, we've gone through, yeah, all files available in the chat box. Not true. But just a reminder for Valley communities, and we'll talk a little more about this maybe right now, Drew, the next week we'd want to have a concept pulled together. So with that, anyone who doesn't have any further questions can take off. Anyone who would like to continue to discuss, please feel free to stick around. I will be here and Mark will be here as long as he can. And we'll go from there. Oh, Wayne's on too. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Again, feel free to stick around and ask questions.
Okay, Christian, I'll be in touch later, but thank you for the guidance here. Good job.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Oh, there, that went away.
Okay, folks.
Would you like me to stop recording now?
Yeah, I think we can stop recording now.